Hi there, welcome back. I'm glad you're here and I'm happy to be back for the second presentation in our second real life series. If you go to the archive, you can find our first three-part series, which is all about the process of investing, and you can find our first three-part real life series, which covered three topics. The first was moving from debt to savings. The second was maximizing your employer-sponsored retirement plan, that'd be your 401k or 403b. And the third was women and money. Last month, we started our second three-part real-life series with a rather difficult topic, divorce. And today, I wanted to lighten it up a bit and talk about something that I am, perhaps like you, smack in the middle of. How do I raise my kids to be financially literate, at the same time protect them from either the fear of finance or the unhealthy love of money and consumption? My wife and I seem to go round and around about allowance. How much? What time? For what? And spending. What are we supposed to spend on the kids and what should they be looking at doing themselves? Now, if you struggle with questions of raising financially responsible kids, I hope and believe that this is going to be helpful for you. Thinking it through is certainly very helpful for me, and still, I don't know it all. If you have another take that's something that's worked for you, let us know about it. Let us share it with other parents. If you've got something successful, let's help other people be successful. I'm Jonathan Dio. I'm the founder of Dio Wealth Management, where we do one-on-one financial planning and offer portfolio and risk management services to about 250 families in the San Francisco Bay Area. I also blog about true wealth at happinessdividend.com, which you must have visited if you're here, and to which I hope you visit often and perhaps even subscribe. The whole purpose of our newsletter and these webinars is to help you get on the right track with your personal finances. True wealth, as I define it, has an element of personal finance and money, but it actually places that finance and money into the context of a fuller, richer, and more meaningful life. Money and concerns about money, financial decisions can take up a lot of time if you let it, but it doesn't need to. We try to break personal finance and investing down to the simplest decisions, those things that we can control, so we can leave more room in our lives for the things that really matter. If we are so overcome by financial worries that we don't have time for family, friends, health, and a very real search for meaning in life, I'm not sure we can ever actually be happy. True wealth for me is about all those places where love and money overlap. Again, welcome. Thanks for coming. Before we get into today's topic, I want to remind you of our fundamental philosophy. It is never what markets and economies do that makes you successful. It is what you do, or sometimes more importantly, don't do, that makes you financially successful. Anyone can follow some simple, basic steps and become both more financially successful and, we believe, happier in the process. It takes patience and discipline more than it takes smarts. Now again, I believe that anyone with the right beliefs and behaviors can get there. How much the better if they start with those right beliefs and behaviors really early in life. And that's what we want to talk about today. Now, I know this gets repetitive, but the industry attorneys tell us that I gotta let you know this is for general information and education only. Everyone's situation is different. Please don't run out and implement all of these strategies right away. Think about what you learned today, and then before you act, ask some questions, get more specific answers suited to your kids and your family situation. Every financial decision, including how we raise our kids, involves trade-offs and risks. And what we're trying to do today is build some financial literacy and an understanding of the importance of planning for your financial future. As you get going, I hope you stay engaged and I hope you take some notes. And if you have questions, write them down during the process and ask them at the end. If we have time, we're going to answer them live. If not, we'll answer them via social media when it's all over. If you ask questions, I promise you we will answer them. Welcome again to the second presentation in our second real-life series, Kids and Cash. Before I forget to mention it, we sent an email that had a link to the worksheets for today's webinar. If you haven't already done so, go to happinessdividend.com real quick, click on the Mindful Money Toolbox, look for the real-life series, Kids and Cash worksheets, because we'll be using them in today's presentation. All right. Digging right in. What do food and money have in common? Well, we all have a lifelong relationship with both of these things. And because that's the case, it's a good idea to spend the time and energy required to make sure we have a good relationship with them. It might even be more important if we set the example and teach our kids. The first question on your worksheet asks, where do your kids learn about personal finances? Take a moment, write that down. Just write down the first thing that comes to mind. As it turns out, young kids get their habits about food and money from predominantly home. They look at what's around them, they hear discussions they're not part of, they see and feel the attitudes and messages from their family. And more time is spent there than anywhere else, especially in their formative years. You don't even have to talk to them about money or food. They know what your attitude is. They're absorbing your feelings about money and financial issues before they have any idea about the content. Today, personal finance skills are no longer just neat to have. They are a 21st century survival skill. But you don't want your children to merely survive. You want them to thrive, which means they'll need to be prepared to take advantage of the opportunities limited to those with good credit, the ability to budget, save, and invest. It looks like the teens of today will live and compete in a very different world than either we have or their parents are. Their generation had been named Generation Z, but now there's new descriptors, such as recession generation and generation debt. Your kids and teens are learning about money, whether you like it or not, just by being in your home. So what we're suggesting is first, recognize the reality that the money lessons start at home. And then, let's make use of that reality. Let's make a plan. Help them learn the basic skills of personal finance. Now, younger children learn their patterns and core beliefs about money early in the home. But which of these do you think has the most influence on how teens spend and save their money? It's true that all four have some impact, but which one has the greatest impact? As it turns out, the influence of the home keeps going. According to a themint.org survey of more than 1,100 teens, 67% said their biggest influence is the home. Next was television and media with 16%. And then finally, friends and peers ranked lower than many would have guessed with only a 13% influence. And perhaps the biggest disappointment to parents is the very, very low influence coming from schools. Personal finance courses are becoming more common, which is a great sign, but from the results of this and other surveys, schools still have a long way to go. You, the parents, are by far the number one influencer on the way children of all ages will learn to save and spend their money. This probably comes as both good and bad news. Now, Tamara Lewin published an article in 2010 in the New York Times entitled, "If Your Kids Are Awake, They're Probably Online." The article's research-based message is that the average young American now spends practically every waking minute, except for the time they're in school or at practice, using a smartphone, a computer, a television, or another electronic device. They're spending 7.5 hours a day on electronic devices. And because that time includes multitasking, they're actually packing in 11 hours of media into a single day. And remember the Mint.com survey? Showed that the area of greatest influence regarding money is the home. So you can leverage your teens' online time to steer them towards some of the websites that promote financial literacy. Now, in the worksheets, I provided a list of websites that include some quick quizzes and other interactive programs that might appeal to teens and might get you started. I'm sure there's lots more. Please share them with us if you know them. With all the time spent on electronic devices, it's a wonder to me that teens can find time to spend money at all. But they do. Before we look at how they spend, let's look at where they get the money. According to marketingvox.com, teens accumulated money through work, allowances, and sort of as-needed money from parents and gifts. And the amount they get will increase 3.5% annually. In 2006, they spent roughly $80 billion. In 2011, it was more like $91 billion. If this continues, this year, 2016, they're going to spend almost $105 billion in aggregate. Notice that most of the income comes from the parents, and remember that the majority of the teens, so what they learn about money, comes from their home. Checking on your worksheet for a second, take a moment to write down where your kids and teens get their money. Good to know. Now, there are a couple different ways that your kids learn about money in the home. First, perhaps most obviously, is by modeling their parents, your direct habits and behaviors to the extent that they know them. If you save 10% of your income and you talk about the fact that you do so, they'll be more than likely to do this and see this as a normative behavior and follow your lead when they have their own money. But more unpredictable is the family money story, which they're going to learn from you in much the same way you learned it from your parents, before you even knew you were learning money lessons at all. You're not alone. Every family has this issue. Now, without a process to figure out your own and your spouse's communication style, what makes you feel comfortable or agitated around money, It's tough to understand what's going on with your money story, let alone try to fix it. We all have both hardwired and learned communications tendencies and preferences. When we're stressed, our socialized communication styles can disappear, leaving only the hardwired tendencies to rule out the moment. It's generally hard to get a clear understanding of your own as well as your spouse's communication style. So the topic of money, especially between two people tied together by their finances, is especially challenging when those communication styles don't match up well. The upside is you can do something about it. And if you started out as a problem, or this issue started out as a problem, you can actually turn it around. The objective of the money story exercise is to identify your core money beliefs and see if you can better understand where they come from and consciously choose whether or not to act on them. Your money story contains your core beliefs about money. These money beliefs are the source of your thoughts about and behavior with money. And these money thoughts and behaviors lead to your outcomes and consequences. Now let's take a quick moment and look at your own money story. Now I'm going to read through a set of questions here and see what comes to mind and make a note. While you're writing, I'm going to share a couple stories of my own. What did you repeatedly hear about money as a child, as a young adult? How was money earned, spent, and saved? How did your family shop? Did they comparison shop? Now, was money abundant? Was it hidden? Or did you feel there was never enough? Now, when I was growing up, money was always scarce. Throughout my childhood, my parents each had different jobs and started a couple different businesses. My mom started a preschool when I was in kindergarten, and my dad ran a cultured marble manufacturing business and a custom sort of awards ribbon button business. They didn't ever have a source of consistent salary type income until I was in high school. My lessons were grounded in the value of hard work. No matter what, whether it was your own small business or you're working for someone else, you worked harder than your peers and you were grateful for your wage. That was a lesson. Now, I remember once when I was 12 years old and working at my first job and discovered that my friend who got me the job because his dad owned the warehouse where we worked was getting paid more than me, and I wanted to quit. I didn't think that was fair. My dad told me I should stick with it and essentially learn how to work hard. Another big question. How was money discussed in your house? Was it discussed openly, privately, or was it a complete secret? This is kind of what makes me a little bit unique. Even though we never had much income or money, two things stood out when I was growing up. First, my parents were open about money. We talked about money, about the importance of saving, about taxes and investing. And second, they always believed that if they worked hard, they'd survive and get there. And they did. I should say that they ultimately did find great jobs, save money, make decent investment choices, and are today successfully retired. Even though I don't think they started making money and really saving until my brother and I were out of the house, probably. They started late, and importantly, they still ended up okay. Very successful, actually, when you look at the averages, which are a little bit terrifying. So what did having money mean in your family? Did it mean control, success, self-worth, freedom, responsibility? And finally, take a moment to finish the sentence. I grew up believing money. These are the kinds of questions that will help you understand your own money story. And this will be the beginning of understanding your child's money story. Here's an example of how a teen money story can develop out of a family money story. Jeremy was a very good jazz musician in high school. He went to the School of Arts in a town where the incomes were high, and everyone seemed to have the newest and the best. Now, his parents weren't exactly frugal, but their friends referred to them as a low-maintenance family. Rather than driving Mercedes, they drove Hondas. Jeremy had no particular thoughts about his parents having or not having money, but he was aware of how sensible they were about spending it. They lived well, they dressed well, went on several family vacations. Jeremy received an allowance of $100 a month, which he was taught to use to cover gas, food, movies, and entertainment. He also earned some extra money playing jazz piano at parties and events. When Jeremy graduated from high school, he had $5,000 in his bank account, all from his own earnings. The day after graduation, he went to his parents' financial planner for investment advice, and she wasn't at all surprised that he had managed money in the same way his parents did. At 18 years old, he opened a Roth IRA and invested in his first mutual fund. But he wasn't sure he needed to keep any money in checking for spending at college as his financial planner suggested. He was sure everything he wanted at college would be there and already paid for with his tuition. She teased him that maybe he wasn't thinking about that expensive girlfriend in his future. And he said that wasn't the kind of girl that he'd be interested in, but finally agreed he'd put that $1,000 just in case. He interned overseas last summer and is now in his second year of college. That $1,000 is still in the checking account. So take a moment to think about it, and write down what you think your teen would say about your family money story. Money stories have outcomes, both negative and positive. Sometimes a negative money story can have a positive outcome. The main point is we all have the power of choice. Quick example. A money story might be, my family was always broke because my parents spent all their money on parties and flashy cars. The belief from this money story could be that the purpose of money is to have fun and to indulge in whatever I want. This belief leads to continuing the parents' legacy and their behavior and a tough set of circumstances ahead. On the other hand, an opposite belief might be formed. Seeing parents seemingly wasted, a child may learn money should be for safety, security, and a family's well-being. This belief leads to a deep commitment to careful savings and spending and investing decisions and a more promising future. Two different beliefs can come from the same money story and have dramatically different outcomes over time. So when your teen can identify their money story, you can actually have a powerful conversation about choices and outcomes. Knowing their money story gives them the power of choice. Now, they may have a great money story to reinforce, or they may have glimpsed a future of outcomes and limitations they want to avoid. So many of our clients, when they think about it, discover that they are either continuing the family money story legacy by following exactly in their parents' footsteps, or they find that they've rebelled against that story. Either way, I note that the story and how we interpret that story creates our financial outcomes. Money stories are built on habits and messages. The kinds of habits we're talking about include the disciplines your teens observe that you either regularly follow or regularly do not follow, like paying bills on time, saving for specific goals, and having money set aside in case of emergencies. Another set of habits they pick up on are your spending habits at the grocery store, when you're out with the family, at events, at the mall, or on vacation. It's good to speak to them about your savings commitments and savings habits because they don't see these. Let them know why and how you make choices to save rather than spend all of your money. You can change your own money story and the story of your teens by creating systems that make the desired right behaviors easier to follow. And these behaviors eventually become habits. Now, as I said previously, some people think that teens don't need to know too much about money, or that they don't need to know the details about the family's finances. Now, I don't know about the details, but I maintain that there are definitely things all young people need to know. Why? None of us gets very far in life without basic personal finance skills. And there's 6 areas of basic personal finance, and they are cash flow, the difference between needs and wants, the importance and power of savings, how banking works, how to establish and use credit, and how the earnings and taxes pair works. The big question is, how do you teach teens these skills? We know that they absorb all kinds of information without you intending it, but imagine how much they learn if you actually had a plan tailored to their needs. Teens love to feel confident and in control, and money is one of those issues that everyone struggles with because they usually don't have any themselves, or if they do, they're not really sure what to do with it. So you can help them get a handle on money in stages. So your kids are aware that money buys the things that they want at an early age, which gives you plenty of opportunities to set spending guidelines. But by the time they reach 11 or 12 years old, they're ready for more structure to learn the basics of simple personal finances. From ages 12 to 14, kids should know how to manage spending and saving decisions using a debit card or maybe a cash allowance. This is the age to open bank accounts, both a savings account and a checking account that are tied to their debit cards. By age 14, kids should know how to earn money and manage their earnings. This is when they begin to learn about taxes. From ages 14 to 16, teens should start to learn about managing their credit score with low-limit credit cards. They should know how to balance their checking and debit card accounts and track their savings. Finally, ages 15 to 18 are when your teen should start to share some of the expenses you usually pay for, such as car insurance at this point. Now that we know what to teach, the question becomes how to teach it. Now think of this list as your checklist for teaching money skills. The most powerful way to teach is by example. Ask yourself, am I modeling what I want my teens to learn and to become in the area of personal finance? Next, clear guidelines make it easier for both you and your teens to follow a process designed to build good money habits. There are many how-to lists for parents of teens. The resource list I've given you here has some of the best online resources we've found, but it's not exhaustive, and I welcome you and your teens to search around together. Let me know if you find something really good that you think our audience would benefit from. Share it with us, we'll share it with them. Good educational tools have a sound, logical structure to the content, have age-appropriate goals. They also have accountability and consequences built into them. But remember that consequences are only as good as the person enforcing those consequences. Finally, good educational tools leave room for mistakes. After all, mistakes is where most of the learning takes place. Now let's use allowances as an example of how to use the checklist. There's really strong agreement among experts and parents that allowance is a very useful tool to teach kids about saving and spending money. So here are 7 tips for a positive allowance experience using the checklist model. First, teach by example. Model meeting commitments by being consistent with the amount and staying on schedule. If you say you will review their spending with them, make sure to have a regularly scheduled short meeting to do so. Guidelines. Give clear guidelines for spending allowance. Make agreements about what they're now responsible for on their own, such as snacks or movies, gas, maybe their iTunes. Give a little less than they want, thereby encouraging them to make choices between wants and needs. Help them set savings goals using some of those allowances for a future goal. They need to be age appropriate. A 12-year-old may have fewer needs and opportunities to make large spending decisions than a 16-year-old with a driver's license. There needs to be structure. Deposit the scheduled amount of money into their debit card account. Have the bank text you and them each time the card is used with an amount spent and a current balance. Take a look at spending as it happens. Give feedback when it's necessary. Review their spending with them once a month when the statement comes. Good habits need reinforcement. Accountability. Discuss what you expect them to learn from having and spending their own money. Be immediate and consistent with any consequences. This goes for many things in raising kids. Allow room for mistakes. It's better for teens to learn from their mistakes while they're under your roof. This helps them feel the consequences, while also learning that they can recover and move forward. Don't scold or shame them in any way, but work with them and help them learn. I use the example of allowance because it's so very rich with teaching moments. If your teen's allowance is deposited into their checking account, debit account, encourage them to regularly transfer a percentage of that money into their savings account. Seeing money accumulate because of the choices they have made is a big confidence booster for anyone, ourselves and kids and teens included. And the habit of saving is perhaps the iron wire upon which all other good financial habits are hung. If your teen wants more money, give them opportunities to earn more when they do want more, but keep the allowance the same. We know what to teach, how to teach it, and some of what not to do. But there's an important area that we haven't mentioned, and that's the larger issue of the 4 possible choices we have with money. Although with teens, we're usually talking about spending and saving. Those aren't the only 2 options. We can all save money, share it, spend it, or invest it. It may sound simple, and in fact it can be simple if you have a system for where money goes each time money comes in. For teens, the system should be easy, simple to follow, and automated if possible. There's lots of apps out there to help. Without a system, money may be spent too quickly on things that don't really matter, or they may save so much that they miss some enjoyable experiences that are well worth the expense. Talk with your teen about each of the categories and explore ways to make it easy for them to set up their system. So this chart is on one of the worksheets that we have in the handouts, and we're talking about each of the categories and includes the following conversation prompts. This is for you to use with your teen or your child. For spend, the questions are, what do you spend your money on? What things are most important to you? On what do your parents expect you to spend your money on? What do you do when you don't have enough money to buy what you want? What would you do if you had just a little bit more money? For save, the questions are, why do you want to save money at all? What are your savings for? How will it make you feel to be successful at saving? how will you make sure that you save some of your money every time you get your allowance, earn money, or get some as a gift? For invest, we say investing usually means you're willing to take the risk of losing money in exchange for the potential of earning more return on your invested money than you'll get in your savings account. Consider that carefully when choosing an amount to invest. You don't want to invest everything. And finally, for share, the questions are, why do you want to share money? Who do you want to give it to? And how? And how often are you going to do it? Let's start by examining money choices with saving. Learning you can achieve a savings goal is a powerful experience that leads to confidence and self-esteem. For the goal of their choice, the plan will be to increase their savings by 20%. How are you going to do that, you ask? Simple. Set goals they're interested in. Apple's iDevices are great starter goals. My son is in 5th grade and really wants an iPhone. He's researched all the positive and negatives of tweens having cell phones and presented his case to his mom and I that included all the reasons he should be allowed to buy an iPhone. He's not going to get one in 5th or 6th grade, but he can start saving for it. We asked him to write down what else that money could buy. Expensive soccer cleats that he likes, outings with friends, amusement park trips, movies. This is his first lesson, opportunity cost. For a bigger example, let's say your teen would like to buy a car. First, have them explain to you all the reasons they would like to buy that car. This will help your child visualize why they're saving. Next, set a date for when they want the iPhone or the car. Teens and adults, for that matter, are more likely to fulfill their savings commitment if they have a specific date by which they're hoping completion of that goal will occur. Saving for someday in the future isn't nearly as motivated as saving a specific amount for a specific period of time. The next step is to help them figure out how they can save money towards the goal. There are 2 ways, and only 2 ways, to increase saving. Spend less, earn more. Spending $10 a week less doesn't sound that impressive until you think it over 52 weeks, $520. 4 years, that measly $10 could be $2,800. Meanwhile, odd jobs around the house or even a summer job can add another $1,000 to their savings in just a couple months. Cars are the obvious large expense, according to 17 magazine, a 2009 teen spending survey, said teens are saving money for 2 other C's as well, cosmetics and clothes. Next on our list of money choices is sharing. And sharing has a tremendous influence on our overall happiness. The research has suggested that 50% of your happiness is genetic. Nothing you can do about it. Another 10% is circumstantial and can at least partially be explained by luck. And this leaves a huge chunk, 40% of human happiness, which is created by our thoughts, words, and deeds. And this is where giving really fits into your own and your child's happiness equation. If your basics were covered, and you had $5 you really wanted to use in an effort to maximize happiness, you should give that $5 to a person or a cause that will help someone else. There's little data for preteens, but the data for teens is getting better and better all the time. We know what teens save for, and day to day, we know roughly how they're spending their money. According to a recent study of teens in Los Alamos, New Mexico, 72% of teens spent $1 to $50 a week on food. 47% spent that amount on music, entertainment. 37% spent that same amount on recreation. 36% clothing, accessories, cosmetics. 32% spent that amount, $1 to $50 on technology, and 23% spent that on gas. Many teens would say one thing they know for sure is how to spend money. You get it, you spend it. Easy peasy. Spending wisely means you have to have money to buy the things that really matter. Now, I recommend encouraging your teens to go online to take the Teen Spending Challenge. They can also find out what kind of spender they are and how to write a check. For more, go to the Tips for Teens page on themint.org. Finally, we get to investing, the 4th money choice. Before your teens invest their money, they need to understand the relationship between risk and reward. Without this fundamental understanding, they may have a strong reaction, overly strong reaction, the first time they lose some money. The first time you lose money can stay with you for a lifetime and limit the potential to build meaningful wealth for yourself and their future family. As a parent, you want to create an environment where, if there is a loss, it doesn't create permanent damage and fear, but is instead processed in a healthy way. A loss doesn't have to mean disaster. It can simply be a lesson learned. Actually, this can be a lesson for most adults as well. Begin your conversation about investing, even if your teens think they know it all, by explaining the simple investing pyramid. the pyramid shows the risks and rewards of different types of investments. Investments with lower risks and lower returns are at the bottom of the pyramid, where a large base makes it stable. As you move up the pyramid, returns usually become greater, but so do the risks. As an investor, you should move up the pyramid only after you've built a strong foundation, and only if you're comfortable with the idea of risking that money. While higher rates of return at the top are tempting, keep this in mind. There's never a guarantee that higher risk investments will actually give you higher returns. The priority for teens is to make sure they can meet their saving, sharing, and spending goals. When that's accomplished, then help them decide how much of the money that's left over can be invested for at least 5 years. Also, make sure they know that money allocated to investments is not for emergencies or short-term goals. That's what their bank accounts are for. Investing is something to do after you have emergency money set aside, and it is only for those longer-term goals. After the fundamental concepts of risk and reward are covered and understood, it's time to show your teens how they can let their money work for them, while also helping them be smart about investing. Your first order of business is to emphasize that when it comes to investing, they need to commit for the long term, meaning at least 5 years and hopefully longer. I use a compound calculator like the one on Yahoo Finance, or you can build a simple Excel spreadsheet with them, or check out one of the free financial calculator apps that are out there. Run some scenarios with the teens to show them how money grows over time when it's invested. The last financial basic we'll address today is credit cards. By the time they turn 18, about 1 in 5 high school students already has a credit card, and they're not shy about using it. Credit card debt among young people roughly doubled during the 90s, and so did the number of 18 to 24-year-olds filing bankruptcy. According to Nellie Mae, undergraduates carry an average credit card balance of $2,327 and may be paying rates as high as 20%. And this statistic blew my mind. 47% of college students carry 4 or more cards. It's good to remember that as long as they're 18, young people can get a credit card without a cosigner. And perhaps more importantly, you have to know that banks are eager to sign up the next generation of interest payers, so they're going to target late teens and young 20s to get that dependence started early. Given that reality, you might want to start them on the right foot and consistently remind them that it's a credit card, not a cash card. Teens who have success with credit cards in high school do better at managing debt in college. So, what are some of the costly mistakes that get in the way of the successful management of debt? Most important and most common is using a credit card in an ATM machine. That will cost them far more interest because it'll be categorized as a cash advance rather than as a normal charge. Next, and I'm sure you've heard of this, paying only the minimum means ordinary expenses end up costing an extraordinary amount with interest tacked on over time. Of course, late payments are costly. Even if you're late paying off a $15 balance, the late fee could be $35. And finally, going over the limit also creates more fees. Not only are these two immediately expensive, both late payments and over the limit use are negatives that stay on your credit score for years. So let's turn this around and look at the best practices. They include using low limit cards to keep a limit on the potential damages to you as the cosigner if they're under 18, and to them and their credit score. Require teens to pay their balance every month to help them connect the concept that they're spending real money that comes out of their checking account. And monitor their card activity and checking account balance with them every month, especially in the beginning. No discussion of credit is complete without addressing the FICO score, the credit score. You only need to look around at recent economic news with your team to confirm that the credit problems that result from poor money management can linger for a long time. Every financial decision they make can and will affect their credit score. Young people have easier access to credit than the generations before them, as evidenced by the number of young people with 4 or more cards. Unbelievable. It's easy to understand that just like SAT scores are indicators of success in college, credit scores are used to predict success of potential borrowers and sometimes future employees. Let your teens know that though they should be striving for a perfect score of 850, it takes 10 years of perfect credit history to qualify for this score. The reality is that it makes it even more important to start giving them an advantage while they're teenagers. The The average score is 720, which is good enough to get preferred rates when borrowing. Teach your teens that it's important to have a good credit score if they're ever going to borrow money with these favorable terms, lower rates. And it's not just the cost of borrowing that's affected by credit. The cost of their car insurance, maybe even the apartments they can rent or the jobs they can get, can be affected by a credit score. Many potential landlords and employers now review credit scores prior to leasing apartments or offering employment for new jobs. Poor credit can be seen as an indicator of a general lack of responsibility. That's really something to be wary of. Unfortunately, tens of millions of people in the United States have credit blemishes severe enough and FICO credit scores under 620 to make obtaining loans and credit cards with reasonable terms difficult. So what do teens need to do to build and maintain a great credit score? Above all, they need to pay all of their bills on time, all of the time. No bill is unimportant, no creditor is unimportant. Next, they should establish credit early with your help, and they should do it carefully and under your guidance. Remind them to keep the balance on their credit cards to 10% of the limit. Not 50%, not 25%, 10%. If they have a $1,000 limit, they should only use $100. Furthermore, they should pay their balance each month using their own checking account. In other words, whatever they've purchased or used the card for, they already have the money in the bank to pay for it. Credit is a convenience, not something to borrow with. And lastly, they should get a copy of their credit report every year for free at annualcreditreport.com. Please don't take my word for this. While accepting his Teen Choice Award, the actor and popular angel investor Ashton Kutcher offered a few words of financial wisdom. Here's what he said. Here's the best piece of advice I got when I was a teenager. Don't ever charge anything on a credit card if you don't already have the money in the bank to pay for it. I couldn't have said it better myself. So thanks for attending this episode of our real life series, Kids in Cash. We have time for a couple questions here in just a minute. So go ahead and start typing them in that box in the lower left part of the presentation screen. While the questions are coming in, I've got a couple quick reminders I'm going to go through. First, all of our prior webinars and recordings, which you see listed above, are available in our subscribers archive, which is free to newsletter subscribers. As always, if you think this content is valuable, help me spread the word. Follow us on Twitter, tweet about us, like us on Facebook, post some of our events. Look for us when we come to town. In the latter half of 2016, I'm going to start pairing my travel schedule with some small free personal finance workshops. We're going to be in San Diego, I believe, for the first or second week in early May. If you haven't done it, subscribe. And then reach out and tell someone else that you care about to subscribe. Help them begin to educate themselves and tell their kids about this kind of information. And start to get ahead yourself and help others as well. Second, let's take one more look at the disclosure and remember that this is general information only. If you've got a specific concern, ask questions, seek out specific help to your specific concern. All right, let's get to some questions. First question's coming in. This question came in pretty quickly when we asked for questions. If my family finances are a mess, how can I be a good financial role model for my kids? This is truly the one question I was expecting to get because I hear it all the time. The number of people who are confident about their own skill with money is very, very small. I'd say less than 5% of folks think they're good at personal finance. So this tells me that your finances might not be as big a mess as you think relative to everyone else's. I think there's a tendency to think that everyone else has it all figured out and we're just really bad at personal finance. And I just don't think it's the case. Your finances may be a mess, but if that's the case and you know they're a mess, then you aren't as bad at this as you think. You're ahead of many people who have absolutely no idea at all. And admitting things are a mess, being vulnerable without being frightening to your kids about the family's limitations is itself a teaching opportunity. Use it. Start controlling spending better, boost your income, start saving in an emergency fund, and start investing in your company's retirement plan. You know where you are. Start by making choices that will move you forward and share the choice in conversation with your kids. Let them see you clean up the mess, sort of as a cautionary tale. It'll be hard work, I know, but it'll be great education for them. My children ask me how much money I make. Should I tell them? This is really a choice you're going to have to make on your own. You know your child, I don't. Two quick comments. First, kids aren't known for their discretion and they like to compare. My dad is bigger than your dad is pretty benign, but my dad makes more money than your dad is terribly obnoxious. And second, an older teenager might get it, but a child younger than 10 doesn't really understand what it means to have a $60,000 or $100,000 salary. It's just a really big number to them. From my perspective, in order to get the income and spending conversation going, they don't need to know the exact dollar figures. I often recommend using a pie chart, or two pie charts really. The first one describes the family's different sources of income, and the second one describes how we spend the income. This gives them a visual without the dollar amounts of how much of our income comes from what sources and how much of our spending goes to which categories. They can, at a very young age, see how big a deal housing costs are and how much we pay in taxes and how much of the family budget goes to food or vacations. Our simple income pie chart is split between my own income, my wife's income, my bonus, a little rental income, and some portfolio income and some gifting from our parents. We split our spending into 4 pieces: taxes, investing, giving, spending. There's no accident that these are the same categories we talked about teaching earlier. And then as the kids age, we talk about the specifics inside those 4 pieces. Now we have time for just one more quick question. If I can find a pretty quick one here. Okay, good one. Close to home. Are there any games, board games, that you'd recommend for kids to learn about money? Absolutely, this is a fantastic question. As a kid, there were 2 games I played all the time: Monopoly and the Game of Life, which are really good basic introductions to saving money up for planned expenses, investing in surprise emergencies. There are also great resource management games that aren't specifically about money, but teach great money lessons all the same. Some great examples of these are Puerto Rico and the Settlers of Catan series. In addition, I've had some clients recommend Cash Flow 101 from the Rich Dad Poor Dad series or people, and Payday, which takes players through a month-long calendar of income and bills, plannings, and surprises. I'm sorry to say that's all we have time for today. I look forward to seeing you next month as we talk about Social Security, Medicare, and your retirement. Thank you so much again for spending so much time with us today. And as always, I wish you way more than luck.